A black belt asked a one-armed veteran to fight for fun, just for clicks and laughs. But what started as a cruel joke turned into something far more explosive. This wasn't just some quiet night guard. This was a former Special Forces instructor who lost more than just his arm. He lost his brothers in a war caused by the very man backing the fighter. Now, with everything on the line, his dignity, his home, and the lives of his fellow veterans, he steps into the ring with a hidden plan and decades of rage. What happens when a mockery becomes a mission and justice punches back? Every story brings us a little closer together. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from. It's a joy to see how far this family of listeners reaches. Marcus Reynolds stood at the entrance of the Phoenix Veterans Rehabilitation Center, his left hand adjusting the security badge on his uniform. The flickering fluorescent light above cast uneven shadows across the worn linoleum floor, a stark reminder of the facility's aging infrastructure. He glanced at his watch. 7 o'clock sharp. Time for his night shift to begin. The evening air carried a chill as he made his first rounds, his footsteps echoing through the quiet corridors. The walls, once a pristine white, now showed patches of peeling paint and water stains. Marcus knew every crack, every imperfection. This place had become his second home since returning from Afghanistan. In the physical therapy room, Jim Cooper, a former Marine who'd lost both legs to an IED, was finishing his evening exercises. "Hey, Reynolds," Jim called out, wiping sweat from his brow. "Still keeping us safe?" Marcus smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Someone's got to, Cooper." He watched as Jim expertly maneuvered his wheelchair, noting how far the veteran had come since his first day at the center. The sound of approaching footsteps drew Marcus's attention. Dr. Patricia Hoffman emerged from her office, her face showing the strain of another long day. Her presence always brought a sense of warmth to the sterile hallways. "Marcus," she said, clutching a stack of papers. "Do you have a moment?" They moved to the small break room where the coffee maker hummed softly in the background. Patricia sank into a chair, spreading the papers across the table. Budget reports, Marcus noticed. Each page seemed to tell the same story, red ink and declining numbers. "We're running out of options," Patricia explained, her voice tight with concern. "The state funding cuts are worse than we anticipated. Without additional support, we might have to close within 6 months. Marcus felt his chest tighten. His mind flashed back to the explosion in Afghanistan, the searing pain, the chaos, the moment he realized his right arm was gone. But it was here, at Phoenix, where he'd found his way back to life, where dedicated staff like Patricia had helped him see that his worth wasn't measured by what he'd lost. How many veterans would be affected, he asked, though he already knew the answer. He saw them every day, 23 regulars, each with their own battles to fight. "Too many," Patricia replied. "Where else will they go? The nearest facility is 300 miles away." As if to emphasize her point, the sound of laughter drifted in from the common room. Marcus recognized the voices, Dave Martinez practicing his physical therapy exercises, and Sarah Chen leading an evening support group. Both were veterans who'd found purpose here after their service. The center wasn't just a building, it was a lifeline, a place where broken bodies learned to move again, where shattered spirits found healing. Marcus thought of his own journey, how the center had given him purpose when he felt most lost. After the explosion that took his arm, he'd struggled to find his place in civilian life. But here, his experience was valued. His disability didn't define him. "We can't let this place close," Marcus said firmly, his left hand unconsciously touching the empty sleeve where his right arm should be. "There has to be a way." Patricia looked at him with tired but determined eyes. "I'm open to suggestions. These veterans, they deserve better than this." Marcus nodded, his military training kicking in. When faced with impossible odds in Afghanistan, he'd learned to focus on what could be done rather than what couldn't. Now, watching the veterans who'd become his family, he knew this was another battle he couldn't afford to lose. The morning sun glinted off the polished black Tesla as it pulled into the parking lot of Elite Warriors MMA gym. Damon Blackwood stepped out. his designer tracksuit and diamond-studded chain catching the light. A small crew of people scrambled from a second vehicle carrying cameras and lighting equipment. "Make sure you get my good side," Blackwood called out, flashing his practiced smile. "Though let's be real, they're all good sides." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, checking his reflection in the gym's window. "We're ready when you are, Damon," said his main videographer Jake, adjusting his camera. "What's the plan for today's content?" Blackwood stretched dramatically, making sure his movements showed off his muscled physique. "We're going with a day in the life of a champion. My followers eat that stuff up. Show them the grind, you know? The dedication." He smirked. "Plus, we'll throw in some training tips that look good but don't actually give away any of my real techniques." The gym's owner, Steve Martinez, held the door open as Blackwood's entourage filed in. "Remember our agreement, Blackwood. No disrupting my regular members." "Relax, old man," Blackwood said, waving dismissively. "Your gym's about to get more exposure than it's seen in years. You should be thanking me." The film crew quickly set up their equipment around one of the main training areas. Blackwood's social media manager, Melissa, read off statistics from her tablet. "Your last training video hit 2 million views, but engagement's down 15%. We need something extra for this one." "Don't I always deliver?" Blackwood shadowboxed for the cameras, his movements precise and showy. "Start rolling. Let's give them their money's worth." For the next hour, Blackwood performed increasingly elaborate training sequences. He demanded multiple takes of each shot, berating his crew when the lighting wasn't perfect or the angle didn't capture his preferred profile. Regular gym members gave the production a wide berth, some rolling their eyes at the spectacle. "Cut," Blackwood called out during a particularly intense combination. "The speed bag looks cheap on camera. Get me the leather one from my car." He grabbed a towel and walked to the water cooler, not bothering to thank the assistant who rushed to fulfill his request. That's when he noticed movement through the window facing the Veterans Center next door. His eyes locked onto Marcus Reynolds, who was helping an elderly veteran navigate the center's front steps. Blackwood watched, fascinated, as Marcus efficiently assisted the man despite having only one arm. "Melissa," he snapped, beckoning his social media manager over. "Who's that guy?" Melissa peered through the window. "Looks like he works at that veteran's place. Security guard, I think." A slow smile spread across Blackwood's face. "A one-armed security guard? That's perfect." He pulled out his phone and started recording through the window. "Look at this. Guy's missing half an arm, but acts like he can actually do his job. Now that's what I call content." "Damon," Melissa said cautiously, "maybe we shouldn't..." "Shouldn't what? Give my followers what they want?" Blackwood continued filming. "People love inspiration porn, but they love watching me take down fake heroes even more. Remember that wannabe tough guy from last month? Video got 10 million views." He turned to his crew, already planning. "Change of schedule. We're going to work this into today's content. The champion versus the so-called hero. My followers will go crazy." Jake lowered his camera. "You sure about this, boss?" Veterans can be a sensitive topic. "That's exactly why it'll work," Blackwood said, his voice taking on an edge of excitement. "Controversy equals clicks. Besides, what's he going to do about it? Guy's got one arm." He laughed at his own joke. Blackwood spent the next 30 minutes alternating between filming his training session and capturing footage of Marcus through the window. He added running commentary about real fighters versus social media sympathy cases. During a water break, Blackwood scrolled through his phone, admiring his own social media profiles. His main accounts showed millions of followers, each post garnering hundreds of thousands of likes. The comments section was filled with praise from fans who bought into his carefully crafted image of success. "This is getting stale," he muttered, looking at his recent posts. "Need something bigger, something that'll really get people talking." His eyes drifted back to the window, where Marcus was now conducting what appeared to be a self-defense class for a group of veterans. One of the gym's trainers passing by noticed Blackwood's interest. "I wouldn't mess with that guy if I were you." Blackwood scoffed. "What, the one-armed wonder over there? Please, I'm a professional fighter." That's Marcus Reynolds, the trainer said. Former Special Forces combat instructor. Man's forgotten more about fighting than most people will ever know. Special Forces? Blackwood's eyes lit up with predatory interest. Even better. Military angle always plays well with the algorithm. He turned to Melissa. Start researching this guy. I want everything. Service records, social media presence, whatever you can find. There's a story here, and I'm going to be the one to tell it. Through the window, Marcus continued working with his students, unaware of the social media star's growing obsession. The contrast between the two men couldn't have been starker. Blackwood in his expensive workout gear surrounded by cameras and yes-men, while Marcus quietly went about his work, helping fellow veterans rebuild their lives. All right, crew, Blackwood announced, clapping his hands. Let's wrap this standard stuff up. I've got bigger plans brewing. He smiled at his reflection in the window, already imagining the views, the engagement, the controversy his next video would generate. Time to show my followers what a real fighter looks like compared to these pretenders. His crew exchanged worried glances but began packing up their equipment. They'd seen this look in Blackwood's eyes before, the hunger for attention, the need to prove his superiority at someone else's expense. It had made him famous, but it had also made him enemies. Blackwood took one last look through the window at Marcus. Just you wait, old man, he muttered. You're about to become the most viral thing this side of the internet. Damon Blackwood paced in front of his camera setup, checking his hair one final time before going live. The gym had cleared out, leaving just his crew and a few hand-picked extras to create the perfect backdrop for his stream. We're live in 5, 4, 3. Jake held up 2 fingers, then one, before pointing at Blackwood. What's up, champions? Blackwood's voice boomed through the gym. Coming at you live from Elite Warriors MMA, where real fighters train. He moved through the space with practiced swagger, his wireless microphone capturing every word. Today we're talking about what makes a true warrior. Comments began flooding the live stream. Blackwood glanced at the tablet Melissa held up, showing viewer numbers climbing into the thousands. Now check this out, Blackwood continued, moving to the gym's front window. Right next door, we've got this veterans center. And get this, they've got a one-armed security guard who thinks he's some kind of tough guy. He turned the camera toward the window just as Marcus was walking past, conducting his regular security rounds. Look at this, champions. They're letting this guy protect their building. I mean, respect to the veterans and all, but come on. How's he supposed to defend anything with one arm? The live chat exploded with laughing emojis and cruel comments. Blackwood's smile widened as he read some aloud. Is this a joke? No way he's real security. You know what? Let's find out. Before his crew could stop him, Blackwood burst through the gym's front door, camera following. Hey, Sergeant One Arm, yeah, you! Marcus stopped, turning slowly to face Blackwood. His expression remained neutral, but his jaw tightened slightly. I've got 50,000 people watching right now, Blackwood announced, holding up his phone. They're all wondering the same thing. How'd someone like you end up playing security guard? I'm not interested in being part of your show, Marcus said quietly, starting to turn away. What's wrong? Scared to face a real fighter? Blackwood moved to block Marcus's path. Come on, let's give these people what they want. You and me, friendly sparring match. Show everyone what you've got. Inside the Veterans Center, several people had gathered at the windows watching the confrontation. Dr. Hoffman stepped outside, concern etched on her face. Mr. Blackwood, she called out, this is private property. Please don't harass our staff. Harass? This is an opportunity. Blackwood's voice grew louder, playing to his audience. I'm offering your one-armed wonder here a chance at fame. What do you say, hero? Want to prove yourself against a real champion? Marcus's voice remained steady. I don't need to prove anything to you or your followers. You hear that, champions? Blackwood turned back to his camera. Looks like our so-called warrior doesn't have what it takes. Maybe losing that arm took his fighting spirit too. A muscle twitched in Marcus's cheek, but he maintained his composure. Behind him, several veterans had emerged from the center, including some from his morning self-defense class. Don't let him talk to you like that, Marcus, called out Jimmy, a young veteran in a wheelchair. Yeah, show this punk what Special Forces is made of, another veteran shouted. Marcus held up his hand, silencing his supporters. This isn't the time or place for ego games, Mr. Blackwood. Please leave our property. Blackwood's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. Special Forces? Even better. Hey champions, turns out our one-armed friend here used to be some kind of elite warrior. Now he's running away from a challenge. What happened to never back down, soldier? The live stream chat was going crazy. Blackwood's followers were eating up the confrontation, demanding action. Melissa tried to intervene, tugging at Blackwood's sleeve, but he shrugged her off. Tell you what, Blackwood pressed on. I'll make it interesting. When I win, you admit on camera that you're just playing pretend security guard. If by some miracle you win. He pulled out his wallet, peeling off several $100 bills. $5,000 to your little veterans charity case here. Marcus felt the weight of every eye on him. Blackwood's cameras, his fellow veterans, Dr. Hoffman's concerned gaze. His military training screamed at him to accept the challenge, to never show weakness. But years of therapy and hard-won wisdom reminded him that not every battle needed to be fought. The answer is no, Marcus said firmly. Now leave before I have to call the actual police. You heard it here first, champions. Blackwood backed away, playing to his camera. The so-called Special Forces warrior doesn't want any part of this. Maybe next time we'll challenge someone who actually knows how to fight. As Blackwood and his crew retreated to the gym, laughter echoing behind them, Marcus turned to face the gathered veterans. Some looked disappointed, others angry on his behalf. Why'd you let him disrespect you like that? Jimmy demanded. Marcus placed his hand on the young veteran's shoulder. Because real strength isn't about proving yourself to fools with cameras. It's about knowing which fights matter. Dr. Hoffman approached, her tablet displaying Blackwood's live stream, which was already going viral. This isn't going away, Marcus. His followers are sharing it everywhere. Marcus watched through the window as Blackwood celebrated with his crew, already planning how to milk more content from the confrontation. The familiar weight of combat training pulled at him. The countless hours spent teaching soldiers hand-to-hand combat. The muscle memory that hadn't faded even with the loss of his arm. Let them watch their videos, Marcus said quietly. We've got more important work to do here. But as he resumed his rounds, Marcus couldn't shake the echo of Blackwood's taunts, or the memory of his military instructors teaching him that backing down only encouraged bullies. The struggle played across his face, the warrior's instinct to meet force with force battling against the wisdom of choosing peace. Inside the gym, Blackwood was already reviewing the footage with his team. This is gold. We'll milk this for weeks. The coward angle, the disability angle, the military angle. It's perfect. His phone buzzed constantly with notifications as the confrontation spread across social media platforms. Comments ranged from those supporting Marcus to others mocking him, but Blackwood didn't care which side people took. Engagement was engagement. Boss, Jake said hesitantly, maybe we should ease up. Veterans have a lot of supporters. That's exactly why this works, Blackwood cut him off. Controversy equals clicks, and clicks equal cash. Trust me, this is just the beginning. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the Veteran Center to find Dr. Hoffman waiting in the lobby, her face drawn with worry. She held her tablet, and Marcus could tell from her expression that something was wrong. You need to see this, she said quietly. She played a video that made Marcus's stomach turn. Somehow, Blackwood had gotten footage from inside the Veteran Center. Shaky camera work suggesting it was filmed secretly through windows and partially open doors. The video showed veterans during their therapy sessions working through their struggles with prosthetic limbs, dealing with trauma during counseling groups. But what made it truly sickening was Blackwood's voiceover. Check out this sad scene, champions. These broken soldiers can barely function, and they expect your tax dollars to keep funding their little pity party. Marcus clenched his fist. When did he film this? Must have been yesterday after the confrontation. Dr. Hoffman swiped to show more social media posts. He's been posting content all night, calling us a waste of space and suggesting we're scamming people for donations. The video had already racked up hundreds of thousands of views. Comments ranged from outraged support for the veterans to cruel agreement with Blackwood's mockery. But what caught Marcus's eye were the responses from their regular donors. "Henderson Financial is considering their commitment?" Marcus read in disbelief. "They've supported us for years." Dr. Hoffman nodded grimly. "3 other major donors have already emailed expressing concerns. They were already nervous about our budget issues. Now, with this negative publicity..." She took a deep breath. "This could be what finally forces us to close." Marcus watched as Jimmy wheeled past them toward the physical therapy room, his shoulders slumped. The young veteran had been making incredible progress, but today, he looked defeated. "Hey, Jimmy," Marcus called out. "Ready for morning exercises?" Jimmy didn't even look up. "What's the point? Everyone thinks we're just broken losers anyway." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd seen this before in combat, how quickly morale could crumble under sustained attack. But this wasn't a battlefield. These were people fighting to rebuild their lives. More veterans filtered in, many checking their phones, seeing themselves portrayed as objects of pity and ridicule. The usual morning energy was replaced by a heavy silence. "This is my fault," Marcus said quietly to Dr. Hoffman. "If I had handled him differently yesterday..." "Don't," she interrupted firmly. "Blackwood would have found a way to create his content no matter what you did. He's not just attacking you. He's attacking everything we stand for." Marcus walked through the center, seeing the impact everywhere. The art therapy room, usually filled with laughter, sat empty. The job training class had half its normal attendance. Even the therapy dogs seemed to sense the change, whining softly at their handlers. In the break room, he found Tom, a former Marine who'd lost both legs, staring at his phone. "My kids saw the video at school," Tom said without looking up. "Their classmates were making jokes about their broken daddy." Marcus felt a familiar surge of protective anger, the same feeling that had driven him to shield his unit in combat. These people weren't just clients or fellow veterans, they were family. Dr. Hoffman called an emergency staff meeting at 10 o'clock. The news wasn't good. "Our spring fundraiser has lost 3 corporate sponsors," she reported. "The negative comments on our social media are driving away individual donors, and the county grant committee is expressing concerns about public perception." "Can't we sue him for filming without permission?" asked Sarah, one of the physical therapists. "Our lawyer says it's complicated since most of the footage was taken from public spaces looking in," Dr. Hoffman replied. "And a lawsuit would just bring more attention to his claims." Marcus sat silently, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He'd sworn to protect this place, these people. Now, because he'd become the target of Blackwood's attention, everything they'd built was at risk. A notification sound made everyone check their phones. Blackwood had just posted another video, this one filmed from his gym's roof, looking down at veterans arriving at the center. "Day 2 of exposing the truth about our neighbors," his voice narrated. "Look at these people, champions. They want your sympathy, your money, but what are they really doing with it? Stay tuned. We're just getting started." Dr. Hoffman muted the video, but the damage was done. Marcus could see the fear and uncertainty on every face in the room. The center had always operated on a thin margin, dependent on community support and goodwill. Now that goodwill was being poisoned by a man who saw their struggles as nothing more than content for his channel. "We have enough operating funds for maybe 2 months," Dr. Hoffman announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "If we can't restore donor confidence by then..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what closure would mean. Veterans who relied on their specialized therapy programs would be left without support. The job training programs that helped disabled veterans find new careers would end. The community they'd built, the safe space where people could heal and rebuild, would disappear. Marcus stood up. "I need to make my rounds," he said quietly, unable to sit still any longer. As he walked the perimeter, he saw Blackwood through the gym windows, surrounded by his usual entourage, laughing as they reviewed footage on their phones. The social media star caught his eye and gave a mocking salute. Marcus continued his patrol, each step heavy with the knowledge that his presence, his refusal to engage with Blackwood's challenge, had somehow brought this crisis to the people he cared about most. The Veterans Center had saved him after he lost his arm, given him purpose when he felt lost. Now it was under attack, and he felt powerless to protect it. Inside, he could hear Dr. Hoffman on the phone, trying to reassure another worried donor. Through the windows, he watched his fellow veterans going through their daily routines, but the usual determination in their faces had been replaced by doubt and defeat. This wasn't just about his pride anymore. This wasn't even about Blackwood's childish provocations. This was about survival. The survival of a place that had saved countless lives, that continued to offer hope to those who'd sacrificed so much for their country. The question was, how could he fight back against an enemy who turned everything, even defeat, into profitable content? How could he protect the center without giving Blackwood exactly what he wanted? Marcus sat in front of his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his tired face. After his shift at the Veterans Center, he'd spent hours digging into Damon Blackwood's background. Something about the timing of the harassment felt too convenient. A message notification popped up from his old army buddy who now worked in real estate development. "Check your email, Marcus." "You were right. There's more to this story." Opening his inbox, Marcus found property records and business filings. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the documents. The MMA gym wasn't just Blackwood's training space. It was owned by Brennan Development Corporation, a subsidiary of Theodore Brennan's vast business empire. Theodore Brennan, Marcus whispered, the name tasting bitter in his mouth. He remembered the congressional hearings 3 years ago, the investigation into substandard military housing that had collapsed in Afghanistan, the same collapse that had killed 2 of his unit members and cost him his arm. Brennan had escaped responsibility through expensive lawyers and carefully worded denials. Now here he was again, his company quietly buying up properties throughout the neighborhood. A knock at his door startled him from his research. Through the peephole, he saw Rita Castellanos, one of the center's regular clients. The former Navy SEAL instructor stood balanced on her prosthetic leg, waiting patiently. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," Rita said when he opened the door, "but we need to talk about Blackwood." Marcus invited her in, noting how she moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd thoroughly mastered her prosthetic. She'd lost her leg during a training accident, but had turned that experience into a career helping other disabled veterans adapt to their new circumstances. "I've been watching his videos," Rita said, settling onto Marcus's couch. "He's not just some attention-seeking fighter. This is coordinated harassment." Marcus nodded, turning his laptop to show her the documents. "Look at this. Brennan Development has bought 6 buildings in the neighborhood in the last 3 months. They're creating pressure to force out long-term tenants." Rita leaned forward, her dark eyes scanning the information. "And the Veterans Center sits right in the middle of their planned development area." She looked up at Marcus. "They're using Blackwood to drive us out." "Makes sense," Marcus said. "Negative publicity scares away donors, center closes, property becomes available." He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "And Blackwood gets his viral content while doing Brennan's dirty work." "I saw your service record, you know," Rita said suddenly. "When you first started at the center. Former Special Forces, hand-to-hand combat instructor. Top of your class." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. That was before. He gestured to his missing forearm. "Before you learned to adapt? Before you showed dozens of other veterans that disability doesn't mean defeat?" Rita stood up, her prosthetic leg gleaming in the apartment's light. "You're being underestimated, Marcus. By Blackwood, by Brennan, maybe even by yourself." "What are you suggesting? Let me help you prepare." Rita's voice carried the same commanding tone she'd used training SEALs. "You haven't lost your knowledge, your experience. You've just forgotten how to apply it with your new circumstances." Marcus stood and walked to his window, looking down at the quiet street below. "I swore I was done fighting." "We're already in a fight," Rita replied. "Brennan and Blackwood picked it. The only question is, are we going to let them win by default?" Marcus turned back to her, seeing the same determination he'd once felt as an instructor. "You really think I can still fight effectively?" Rita smiled. "I think you're going to surprise everyone, especially Blackwood. His social media fame hasn't taught him what real combat experience means." "Even with one arm?" "Because of one arm," Rita corrected. You've spent years adapting, learning new ways to move, to balance. Blackwood won't know how to handle that. Marcus looked at his reflection in the window, the missing forearm, the scars visible on his neck. But he also saw the military bearing that had never left him, the strength that hadn't diminished. When do we start? He asked. Tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock. The center's gym before anyone else arrives. Rita moved toward the door, then paused. And Marcus? Bring everything you use to teach your special forces students. We're going to need it. After she left, Marcus returned to his laptop, diving deeper into Theodore Brennan's business dealings. The pattern became clear. Neighborhood after neighborhood transformed through pressure tactics and strategic property acquisitions. The Veteran Center wasn't just collateral damage, it was a target. He opened a new document and began typing, recording everything he'd discovered. If things went wrong, someone would need to know the truth about Brennan's involvement. The wealthy businessman had hidden behind shell companies and proxies for years, using people like Blackwood to do his dirty work. Marcus saved the file and encrypted it, sending copies to both Dr. Hoffman and Rita. Then he stood up and walked to his closet, pulling out an old military footlocker. Inside, beneath his folded uniform, lay his hand-to-hand combat training manuals from his instructor days. He spread them on his kitchen table, the familiar diagrams and notes bringing back memories of teaching soldiers how to defend themselves. He'd always emphasized adaptability, using an opponent's strength against them. Now he'd need to apply those principles in a whole new way. His phone buzzed with a text from Rita. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start reminding you who you really are. Marcus closed the training manuals and looked at the photo on his wall, his old unit, smiling and whole, before Brennan's substandard buildings had changed everything. He'd been unable to protect them then, but now he had a chance to protect something else, to stand against the same man who'd sacrificed soldiers' lives for profit. This time, Theodore Brennan wouldn't be able to hide behind his lawyers and shell companies. This time, Marcus would make sure the truth came out, one way or another. The Veteran Center's gym was dark and quiet at 5 o'clock in the morning. Only the emergency lights cast long shadows across the exercise equipment and training mats. Marcus arrived early, his gym bag slung over his shoulder, to find Rita already there, methodically arranging training equipment. First thing, Rita said without looking up, show me your current workout routine. Marcus dropped his bag and moved through his adapted exercises. One-armed push-ups, modified pull-ups, and core work that kept him fit for his security duties. Rita watched with the sharp eye of an experienced instructor. Good foundation, she nodded, but we need to rebuild your combat mindset. Show me your old Special Forces stance. Marcus settled into the familiar fighting position, muscle memory taking over despite the years since he'd last trained this way. Rita circled him, making small adjustments to his balance. Your center of gravity has changed since losing your arm, she explained. But that's not a weakness. It's just different. We'll use that difference to surprise Blackwood. Over the next hour, Rita had Marcus moving through basic strikes and blocks, helping him rediscover techniques he'd once taught to others. She recorded his movements on her phone, playing them back to show where he could adjust his weight distribution. Remember, Rita said, demonstrating a defensive move with her prosthetic leg, adaptation isn't about copying traditional techniques. It's about reinventing them for your new reality. Marcus watched her fluid movements, noting how she'd modified standard SEAL training to work with her prosthetic. How long did it take you? To adapt? 2 years of frustration, Rita admitted, until I stopped trying to fight like I used to and started fighting like who I am now. She tossed him a focus pad. Hold it against your chest. We're going to work on your defensive capabilities. As they trained, Marcus shared more about his time in Afghanistan. We were clearing buildings in Kandahar, he said between exercises. Standard sweep operation. The structure was supposedly cleared by Brennan's inspection team months before. Rita held steady as Marcus practiced deflecting strikes. The building collapsed. Support beam gave way, faulty materials. Marcus's jaw tightened at the memory. 2 of my men were trapped in the collapse. I was trying to reach them when the secondary collapse happened. That's when I lost the arm. Rita paused their training, recognizing the weight of the moment. And Brennan's company faced no consequences? Their lawyers argued it was combat damage, not structural failure. Marcus flexed his remaining hand. They buried the evidence under classified reports and military bureaucracy. And now he's here, using Blackwood to try to bury another veteran facility. Rita's voice carried a note of steel. Not this time. They moved on to grappling techniques, with Rita teaching Marcus how to use his opponent's momentum against them. His military training began to mesh with his adapted movements, creating a unique fighting style that didn't rely on having two arms. Blackwood will expect you to be weak on your right side, Rita explained, demonstrating an escape move. But we're going to turn that assumption into a trap. Your missing arm means less for him to grab, less to control. Days turned into weeks of early morning sessions. Marcus's confidence grew with each practice, his body remembering its former capabilities while discovering new ones. Rita proved to be not just an instructor but a friend who understood the complex journey of adapting to life-changing injuries. "You know what most people don't understand about combat?" Rita said one morning, as they practiced counterstrikes. "It's not about who's stronger or faster. It's about who's smarter, who's better prepared." Marcus nodded, recalling his own teaching days. "And who's more committed to the outcome." They developed strategies specifically for Blackwood's fighting style, studying his MMA matches and social media training videos. Rita pointed out patterns in his technique: a tendency to showboat, to underestimate opponents, to rely on pure strength over strategy. "He fights for cameras," Rita observed, showing Marcus how to exploit Blackwood's theatrical style. "You fought to survive. That's the difference we're going to use." One morning, after a particularly intense training session, Marcus found himself staring at his reflection in the gym's mirror. His missing forearm was no longer the first thing he noticed. Instead, he saw the confident stance of a warrior who'd learned to adapt and overcome. "Having second thoughts?" Rita asked, catching his contemplative look. "No," Marcus replied, turning away from the mirror. "Just remembering something I used to tell my students. The weapon isn't your arm or your leg. It's your mind." Rita smiled, tossing him a towel. "Looks like the teacher is remembering his own lessons." As they packed up their training gear, Marcus felt a deep gratitude for Rita's friendship and guidance. She'd helped him rediscover not just his physical capabilities, but his sense of purpose. "Thank you," he said simply, "for believing I could do this when I wasn't sure myself." Rita shouldered her gym bag, her prosthetic leg catching the early morning light. "You never lost your strength, Marcus. You just needed someone to remind you where to find it." They walked out of the gym together, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Through the windows, they could see Blackwood's gym next door, its gaudy sign a reminder of the challenge ahead. But now, instead of dread, Marcus felt ready. Not just to fight, but to stand up for everything the Veteran Center represented. "Same time tomorrow?" Rita asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus nodded, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a good training session in his muscles. "Wouldn't miss it." The morning sun hadn't yet risen when 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of Blackwood's gym. Marcus watched from his security post as Blackwood emerged from the lead vehicle, followed by 6 muscular men in matching tracksuits emblazoned with Blackwood's logo. "Time to show these losers who owns this neighborhood," Blackwood's voice carried across the parking lot as he addressed his entourage. "Let's give them a proper welcome." Marcus pressed the radio button on his shoulder. "Jim, Tom, we've got company. Make sure everyone stays inside during their morning therapy sessions." Throughout the morning, Blackwood's fighters positioned themselves strategically around the property line between the 2 buildings. They filmed TikTok videos mocking the veterans who arrived for their appointments, flexing their muscles and making exaggerated limping gestures. Inside the center, Dr. Patricia Hoffman was helping a young veteran with his physical therapy when the sound of breaking glass shattered the morning calm. Marcus rushed to the scene to find a brick had been thrown through one of the front windows, with Blackwood's fighters laughing and recording from a distance. "This is getting out of hand," Patricia said, joining Marcus as he documented the damage. "They're trying to frighten away our patients." Marcus picked up the brick, his jaw tight. This isn't just harassment anymore. They're escalating deliberately. He turned to face Patricia. I need to know everything about our financial situation. There's more going on here than just Blackwood's social media stunts. Later that evening, Patricia invited Marcus to her office. She looked tired as she spread financial documents across her desk. We're 3 months behind on our mortgage, she admitted. The bank's been patient because of our nonprofit status, but she pushed a letter forward. They're foreclosing next month. Who holds the mortgage? Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. A subsidiary of Brennan Construction. Patricia ran her fingers through her hair. I should have seen it coming. 5 other businesses in the neighborhood have closed this year alone. All their buildings were bought by Brennan's company. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me about yourself, Patricia. How did you end up here? Her eyes softened at the question. I had a private practice downtown. Good money, easy hours. Then my brother came home from Iraq. She paused, emotion catching in her throat. He needed help, but the VA was overwhelmed. I started volunteering here, saw how many others needed support. Eventually sold my practice to work here full-time. Their eyes met across the desk and Marcus felt something shift between them. A deeper understanding, a shared purpose. Your brother? Marcus asked gently. He died 2 years ago. But this place, these veterans, they're my family now. She reached across the desk and squeezed Marcus's hand. I can't let Brennan destroy that. The next morning brought more intimidation. Blackwood's fighters blocked the entrance, forcing veterans to navigate through their threatening presence. Marcus documented everything, building a case while protecting the center's patients. During his lunch break, Marcus met with a contact from his military days who now worked in city planning. The evidence of Brennan's scheme became clear: systematic property devaluation through orchestrated incidents, vandalism, noise complaints, and negative social media campaigns. Once property values plummeted, Brennan's company swooped in to buy at bargain prices. Marcus shared his findings with Patricia that afternoon. Brennan's building a luxury development, he explained. The Veteran Center is the last property he needs. Blackwood's harassment campaign isn't just about me. It's about driving down the property value and scaring away our remaining donors. Patricia processed this information, her face showing both anger and determination. We can't let them win, Marcus. These veterans have nowhere else to go. Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from the gym. They rushed to find Blackwood, and his fighters had entered the facility during group therapy, filming and mocking the veterans as they exercised. Look at this sad excuse for a gym, Blackwood announced to his camera. No wonder these guys can't get better. They need a real facility, right, boys? Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between Blackwood's group and the veterans. You're trespassing. Leave now. Blackwood's fighters spread out, creating an intimidating wall of muscle. Or what? One arm? You gonna stop all of us? The tension in the room was electric. Several veterans moved to stand behind Marcus, including Rita, who balanced perfectly on her prosthetic leg in a fighting stance. Last warning, Marcus said quietly. Exit the building. Blackwood stepped closer, his camera still rolling. Make me. Marcus remained perfectly still, his military training evident in his controlled response. You're not here for a fight, Blackwood. You're here for content. But if you touch anyone in this building, you'll get something your followers won't want to see. Something in Marcus's voice, the absolute certainty of his words, made Blackwood hesitate. After a tense moment, he waved to his fighters. We got what we need. Let's go make this viral. As they left, Patricia approached Marcus. That was too close. It's going to get worse, Marcus replied. Brennan's desperate to close this deal. He'll push Blackwood to create an incident that forces us to shut down. Patricia looked around at the shaken veterans returning to their exercises. What can we do? We fight back, Marcus said firmly. Not with fists, with the truth. I've got evidence of Brennan's property scheme, but we need more. Something that connects him directly to Blackwood's harassment. Patricia touched his arm gently. Whatever you need, I'm with you, we all are. Marcus looked at her, seeing not just the dedicated doctor, but a partner in this fight. The connection between them had grown stronger through this crisis, built on shared values and mutual respect. First, he said, we need to protect our people. Then we expose Brennan's entire operation. He thinks we're weak because we're damaged. He's about to learn how wrong he is. Marcus sat at his small desk in the security office, surrounded by stacks of documents. His laptop screen glowed in the dim light, displaying construction contracts and material requisition forms he'd obtained through his military contacts. Something about Brennan Construction's involvement in overseas military housing projects had been nagging at his mind. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Marcus barely noticed as he scrolled through page after page of technical specifications. His remaining hand trembled slightly as a familiar date caught his eye. March 15th, 2 years ago. The day that changed everything. No, he whispered, double-checking the contract numbers. It can't be. But there it was in black and white. Brennan Construction had been the supplier for the military housing units in his deployment zone. The same buildings that had collapsed like paper during routine operations. The same faulty materials that had turned a simple breach exercise into a death trap. Marcus pulled up the investigation report he'd read dozens of times before. The explosion that took his arm had been attributed to structural failure, support beams that crumbled under minimal explosive force, spreading the blast far beyond its intended radius. 3 of his men had died that day: Rodriguez, Chen, and Thompson. Good soldiers, friends. His throat tightened as he cross-referenced the material specifications. Brennan's company had substituted cheaper materials, falsified quality reports, and pocketed the difference. They'd known the risks. They just hadn't cared. The sound of footsteps made him look up. Rita Castellanos stood in the doorway, concern evident on her face. "You missed our training session," she said. "I thought I'd check." She trailed off, noting his expression. "What's wrong?" Marcus gestured to the screen, his voice rough with emotion. "I found the connection. Brennan, he's the reason I lost my arm. The reason Rodriguez, Chen, and Thompson are dead." Rita moved closer, her prosthetic leg making a soft sound against the floor. She leaned over his shoulder, quickly scanning the documents. Her sharp intake of breath told him she understood the implications. "These materials reports," she said, pointing to a specific section. "They're showing military-grade reinforcement, but the actual installation photos..." She shook her head in disgust. "They used commercial-grade steel in a combat zone." "They saved $4 million on that contract alone," Marcus said bitterly. $4 million worth of American soldiers' lives. The door opened again and Dr. Hoffman entered. She must have been working late again, trying to keep the center's finances afloat. One look at Marcus's face made her hurry over. "What did you find?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Marcus took a deep breath, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Remember the explosion I told you about? The one that took my arm?" He gestured to the documents. Brennan's company supplied the materials. They cut corners, falsified reports, knew the buildings weren't safe for military use. Patricia's hand tightened on his shoulder as she read. "Oh, Marcus," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." 3 men died that day, Marcus continued, pulling up their service photos. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez. He had 2 kids back home. Specialist David Chen. He was going to propose to his girlfriend when we got back. And Private First Class James Thompson, barely 21 years old. Rita lowered herself into a nearby chair, her face grim. "This changes everything." "It's not just about the center anymore," Marcus agreed. "Or Blackwood's harassment. This is about justice for every soldier who trusted those buildings with their lives." Patricia moved around the desk to face him. "We need to be careful here. Brennan's not just some wealthy businessman anymore. He's someone who's already proven he'll sacrifice lives for profit." "That's exactly why we can't back down," Marcus said, his voice finding new strength. "Blackwood's just a puppet, but through him, we can expose Brennan's entire operation. All those social media followers Blackwood's so proud of, they're about to learn the truth about who's really funding their hero." Rita leaned forward, her military training evident in her focused expression. We'll need more than just these documents. Brennan's lawyers will bury us in paperwork and denials. I've got contacts in military procurement, Marcus said, and I've been keeping detailed records of everything Blackwood's done to harass the center. If we can prove Brennan's funding him, I might be able to help with that, Patricia interrupted, pulling out her phone. Remember last week when Blackwood's fighters showed up in those new tracksuits? I took photos of the brand labels. They're from a subsidiary of Brennan's company. Marcus nodded slowly, his tactical mind already forming connections. The gym's renovation, the expensive equipment, the promotional materials. Blackwood's whole operation is bankrolled by Brennan. He's not just trying to drive us out, he's been building Blackwood up as a local celebrity to help gentrify the neighborhood. And every time Blackwood posts a video harassing our veterans, Rita added, he's doing Brennan's dirty work, driving down property values while building his social media following. Marcus stood up, moving to the window that overlooked the parking lot. In the distance, he could see the lights still on in Blackwood's gym, where the fighter was probably planning his next provocative stunt. They think this is all a game, he said quietly. Blackwood gets his views, Brennan gets his property, and nobody cares about a bunch of broken soldiers. He turned back to face Rita and Patricia, his expression resolute. But they forgot something important. What's that? Patricia asked. Soldiers take care of their own, Marcus replied. And we don't leave anyone behind, not the living and not the dead. Rita stood up, her military bearing matching his. What's the plan? We gather evidence, build our case, and when the time is right. Marcus looked at the photos of his fallen comrades one last time before closing the laptop. We make sure everyone knows exactly who Damon Blackwood is fighting for, and how many American soldiers paid the price for Theodore Brennan's profits. Patricia stepped closer to Marcus, her eyes meeting his. Whatever you need, we're with you. All of us. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of his lost arm, remembering the sound of the explosion that had changed his life. But now that sound carried a different meaning. Not just loss and pain, but a call to action, a demand for justice. Rodriguez Chen Thompson, he said softly, naming his fallen brothers. This time, we're going to make it right. Marcus sat at the small desk in his apartment, surrounded by stacks of documents and 3 laptops. Rita stood behind him, reviewing their growing collection of evidence against Brennan, while Dr. Hoffman paced nearby, making calls to her contacts in veterans advocacy groups. Blackwood just posted another challenge, Rita said, holding up her phone. He's getting desperate for a response. His followers are starting to lose interest in his one-sided harassment campaign. Marcus nodded, not looking up from the military contracts he was studying. Good. The longer we wait, the more reckless he'll become, and the bigger audience he'll promise his sponsors for the eventual fight. Are you sure about this plan? Dr. Hoffman asked, ending her call. Going public during a live event, there are so many things that could go wrong. That's exactly why it'll work, Marcus replied, finally looking up. Brennan's careful, controlled. He buries everything in paperwork and shell companies. But Blackwood? He gestured to the social media feeds displayed on one laptop. Blackwood's all about spectacle, live streams, no delays or editing. Once we're broadcasting, they can't stop what we reveal. Rita pulled up a chair, her military training evident in her precise movements. Walk us through the plan again. All of it. Marcus turned to face them both, his remaining hand resting on the stack of evidence they'd gathered. Step 1. I accept Blackwood's challenge. He'll want to make it a huge event. His social media empire against the broken soldier he's been mocking. He'll insist on streaming it live, Dr. Hoffman added. His whole brand is built on instant content. Exactly, Marcus continued. Step 2. While I'm training publicly with Rita, making sure Blackwood's people see just enough to keep them confident, our real work happens behind the scenes. He gestured to the documents. We've got proof of Brennan's fraudulent military contracts, the substandard materials, the falsified safety reports, plus evidence linking him directly to Blackwood's harassment campaign. Rita nodded approvingly. My contacts in military procurement came through with the material testing records. They proved the steel used in those housing units wasn't just substandard, it was criminally negligent. Step 3, Marcus said, pulling up a detailed timeline on one of the laptops. Happens during the fight itself. We've got veterans at 3 different locations, ready to upload all the evidence simultaneously. The moment the live stream hits 50,000 viewers, everything goes public. Dr. Hoffman leaned against the desk, her face concerned. But you'll still have to fight him, Marcus, with one arm, against a professional fighter. Marcus shared a knowing look with Rita. That's what Blackwood's counting on, but he's forgotten something important about military combat training. We don't fight fair, Rita finished with a grim smile. We fight to win. Marcus stood up and moved to a clear space in the room. Blackwood's trained for the ring. Rules, referees, points. I was trained to end fights quickly, to use an opponent's strength against them. He demonstrated a swift movement that turned his missing arm from a vulnerability into a tactical advantage. Rita's been helping me adapt my old techniques. Blackwood won't be expecting what I can do with one arm. But the fight is just the delivery system, Rita reminded them. The real impact will be the evidence. Every one of Blackwood's followers will see proof that their hero is bankrolled by a man who got American soldiers killed for profit. Dr. Hoffman picked up one of the documents, a photo of Marcus's unit before the explosion. Rodriguez, Chen, and Thompson, their families deserve to know the truth. They'll know, Marcus said quietly. Everyone will know. He turned back to his laptops, pulling up Blackwood's latest social media post. Time to accept his challenge. Rita and Dr. Hoffman watched as Marcus typed out his response. Challenge accepted. 1 fight. Live stream. Winner takes all. It's done, he said, hitting send. No turning back now. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. During the day, Marcus trained visibly at the Veteran Center, letting Blackwood's people film him through the windows. Rita put him through basic drills, making sure to keep his most effective techniques hidden from prying eyes. At night, their real work continued. Dr. Hoffman coordinated with veterans groups across the country, preparing them to amplify the evidence once it went public. Rita worked with her military contacts, building an airtight chain of documentation linking Brennan to the substandard materials and falsified reports. Marcus focused on both aspects, conditioning his body for the fight while organizing their digital strategy. He knew Brennan would try to shut down the live stream the moment he realized what was happening. They would only have a small window of opportunity to get the truth out. 1 week before the fight, Blackwood held a press conference at his gym. This is going to be the stream of the year, he boasted to his followers. The undefeated champion versus the one-armed warrior. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Marcus watched the stream from his apartment, noting how Brennan stood in the background, trying to look uninvolved. But their investigation had uncovered the truth: bank transfers, shell companies, and a clear pattern of using Blackwood to drive down property values in neighborhoods Brennan wanted to acquire. He's getting sloppy, Rita observed, pointing to Brennan's nervous gestures. He knows something's coming. He just doesn't know what. Good, Marcus replied. The more worried he is, the more mistakes he'll make. Dr. Hoffman arrived with dinner, insisting they all take a break from planning. As they ate, she updated them on the latest developments. The veterans groups are ready. The moment everything goes public, they'll launch coordinated social media campaigns and press releases. Brennan won't be able to control the narrative. Marcus looked at his 2 closest allies, the combat instructor who'd helped him reclaim his warrior spirit, and the doctor who'd never lost faith in him. Thank you, he said simply. Both of you. This isn't just my fight anymore. It never was, Doctor. Hoffman replied softly, her hand finding his. This is about justice. For your unit, for our veterans, for everyone Brennan's hurt in his pursuit of profit. Rita raised her water glass in a toast. To Rodriguez, Chen, and Thompson, and to making sure their sacrifice isn't forgotten. Marcus raised his glass with his remaining hand, feeling the weight of responsibility and purpose. The evidence was ready. The plan was set. In 7 days, Blackwood would step into the ring expecting a simple fight. not realizing he was about to become part of something much bigger, the exposure of a corruption that had cost American soldiers their lives. The converted warehouse buzzed with energy as hundreds of spectators filed in, their phones raised high to capture every moment. Massive screens dominated the walls, displaying Blackwood's social media feeds and subscriber counts climbing by the second. The fighter himself strutted around the makeshift ring, playing to his audience with exaggerated gestures and trash talk. Marcus stood quietly in his corner, Rita beside him as they made final preparations. His black t-shirt bore a simple message: "For those who served." Dr. Hoffman sat in the front row, her laptop open and ready. "Live stream numbers are climbing fast," Rita reported, checking her phone. "Already at 45,000 viewers. Blackwood's promotion worked better than we hoped." Marcus nodded, his focus sharp and clear. Time to show everyone what real combat training looks like. The ring announcer, clearly one of Blackwood's regular collaborators, grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most epic confrontation of the year. In this corner, your undefeated social media champion, the man with millions of followers, Damon the Brand Blackwood." Cheers erupted from Blackwood's fans as he posed for the cameras, his expensive robe glittering under the lights. Theodore Brennan watched from a private area above the crowd, his expression carefully neutral. "And in this corner," the announcer continued with exaggerated skepticism, "the challenger, Marcus Reynolds." A smaller but intense cheer came from the group of veterans who'd gathered to support Marcus. He acknowledged them with a slight nod, his military bearing evident in every controlled movement. Blackwood couldn't resist one final taunt as they met in the center. "Ready to become my most viral content yet, soldier boy?" Marcus's reply was quiet, meant only for Blackwood's ears. "You have no idea what's coming." The bell rang and Blackwood immediately charged forward with a flashy combination of strikes, clearly hoping for a quick, spectacular finish. Marcus moved with unexpected fluidity, his years of special forces training evident in every precise step. Where Blackwood saw the missing arm as a weakness, Marcus had transformed it into a tactical advantage, using the shortened limb to deflect strikes while positioning for devastating counters. 50,000 viewers, Rita called out, giving the signal. On cue, Dr. Hoffman began uploading the first batch of documents to Blackwood's livestream chat. Blackwood landed a heavy kick, but Marcus absorbed it with practiced ease, transitioning into a clinch that nullified the fighter's reach advantage. The crowd gasped as Marcus executed a perfect throw, using Blackwood's own momentum to send him crashing to the mat. "What's this about military contracts?" someone in the crowd shouted, reading from their phone. The carefully orchestrated revelation was beginning. Blackwood scrambled up, his confident smile faltering as he noticed people in the audience looking at their phones instead of him. He launched another wild attack, but Marcus slipped it easily, years of teaching hand-to-hand combat to special forces operators evident in his technique. "These documents show Brennan's company used substandard materials in military housing," Rita announced loudly, making sure her voice carried to the live stream microphones. "Materials that got American soldiers killed." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Blackwood, desperate to regain control, threw a reckless haymaker. Marcus ducked under it and delivered a precise strike to the fighter's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. "Your sponsor up there," Marcus said clearly, knowing his words would be picked up by the stream. "Theodore Brennan. He's the reason I lost my arm. His fraudulent contracts got 3 of my brothers killed in Afghanistan." The revelation hit harder than any physical blow. Blackwood's eyes darted to Brennan's private box, seeing his benefactor's face twisted with rage as more documents appeared online. "Check the live stream," someone shouted. "There's proof." Marcus pressed his advantage both physically and psychologically. Each perfectly executed technique demonstrated the difference between sport fighting and military combat training. Where Blackwood had trained for show, Marcus had trained to survive. "You've been his puppet," Marcus told Blackwood as they clinched again. "He used you to harass veterans, to drive down property values, all while hiding the blood on his hands." Brennan was on his phone now, desperately trying to shut down the stream, but it was too late. The evidence was spreading across multiple platforms, shared by thousands of viewers in real time. Blackwood's next attacks came from frustration rather than strategy. Marcus redirected each one, letting the fighter exhaust himself while demonstrating the effectiveness of his adapted combat style. The missing arm that Blackwood had mocked became a lesson in overcoming adversity, in turning perceived weakness into strength. "Those soldiers," Marcus announced between exchanges, "Rodriguez, Chen, and Thompson, they died because Brennan cut corners for profit, and you've been helping him hide it." The crowd's mood shifted dramatically. Phones turned away from the fight to focus on Brennan's private box, where the businessman was now arguing with his security team. Some of Blackwood's own followers began booing their former idol. "It's all true," Rita confirmed, holding up her phone to show military documents. "Falsified safety reports, kickbacks, everything. Your champion has been working for a man who betrayed our troops." Blackwood, his carefully crafted image crumbling in real time, launched a desperate flying knee. Marcus stepped inside the attack, using his shortened right arm to deflect while his left hand struck with surgical precision. The social media star crumpled to the mat, more defeated by the truth than the technique. "Your views are climbing," Marcus told the dazed fighter. "But not for the reason you wanted. Everyone's watching you realize you've been on the wrong side." The referee moved to step in, but Blackwood waved him off, struggling to his feet. His previous arrogance had vanished, replaced by the dawning horror of understanding his role in Brennan's schemes. "Did you know?" he demanded, looking up at Brennan's box. "Did you know about the soldiers?" Brennan's response was to turn and flee, but the damage was done. His hasty exit was captured by dozens of phones, streamed to an audience that now understood the full scope of his crimes. Marcus maintained his ready stance, prepared for anything, but the fight had transformed into something beyond physical combat. The real victory wasn't being won with strikes and throws, but with truth and justice. The live stream counter ticked past 100,000 viewers, each one witnessing not just a fight, but the exposure of a corruption that had cost American lives. Blackwood stood in the center of the ring, his carefully constructed world unraveling as his own followers turned against him in the chat. "Your next viral moment," Marcus told him quietly, "is choosing how you respond to learning the truth." A commotion near the back of the arena caught Marcus's attention. Through the crowd, he spotted Theodore Brennan shoving his way toward the exit, phone pressed to his ear. The businessman's face was twisted with desperation as he barked orders to someone. Rita appeared at Marcus's side, her expression grave. "Marcus, I just intercepted a call. Brennan's ordered his men to torch the Veteran Center. He's trying to destroy the evidence we stored there." Marcus's blood ran cold. The center housed dozens of disabled veterans, many unable to evacuate quickly. Dr. Hoffman was already on her feet, dialing emergency services. "There are people inside," Marcus said, his voice tight with urgency. "Night staff, residents in the medical wing." Blackwood, still dazed on the canvas, pushed himself up. "What's happening?" "Your boss is about to commit murder to cover his tracks," Marcus replied, already moving toward the ropes. The referee tried to stop him, citing match rules, but Marcus brushed past. Through the arena's windows, an orange glow began to illuminate the night sky. Screams erupted from outside as people noticed the flames beginning to lick up the Veteran Center's walls. "Marcus," Rita called out. "The basement archives. All the physical evidence." "The people first," Marcus answered, his training kicking in. Years of military service had taught him to prioritize lives over everything else. He could hear Blackwood's followers in the crowd, their phones still streaming, capturing his choice to abandon his moment of triumph. Marcus burst through the arena's emergency exit, Rita right behind him. The heat from the growing fire hit them like a wall. Through the smoke, they could see figures moving inside the Veteran Center's windows, people trapped on the upper floors. "Call in every emergency service," Marcus shouted to Dr. Hoffman, who was coordinating with first responders on her phone. "We need evacuation support now." Without hesitation, Marcus ran toward the burning building. The fire had started in multiple locations, a professional job meant to destroy everything quickly. He could hear coughing and calls for help from inside. Two of Brennan's men stood watching the blaze, gas cans at their feet. When they saw Marcus approaching, they turned to flee but found themselves face to face with Rita, her military training evident in her stance despite her prosthetic leg. "The fire department's 5 minutes out," she reported, keeping the arsonists cornered. "Go. I've got these two." Marcus nodded and plunged into the smoke-filled building. The heat was intense, and debris was already falling from the ceiling. He could hear frightened voices from the medical wing. "This way," he shouted, guiding 2 staff members toward the exit. "Is anyone else inside?" "Second floor," one of them coughed. 3 residents with limited mobility. Marcus didn't hesitate. As smoke filled the hallway, he moved with purpose toward the stairs, his missing arm not slowing him down. Behind him, he could hear sirens approaching, but he knew they might not arrive in time. The choice between personal victory and saving lives wasn't a choice at all. It was who he was, who he'd always been. Through the thickening smoke, he began making his way up to the 2nd floor, knowing that every second counted. The real fight, the one that mattered most, was just beginning. Smoke filled the 2nd floor hallway as Marcus moved from room to room, his voice cutting through the chaos. "This is Marcus Reynolds. Call out if you need help." A weak voice responded from the end of the corridor. "In here." Marcus found 3 veterans trapped in the medical wing: James with his wheelchair, Sarah recovering from surgery, and old Bill who needed his oxygen tank. The smoke was getting thicker by the second. "Stay low," Marcus commanded, his military training taking over. "Cover your faces with wet cloth." He helped them follow his instructions, tearing down curtains and soaking them in a nearby sink. Through his radio, Rita's voice crackled. "Marcus, fire department's here, but Brennan was spotted heading toward the records room in the East Wing." "Copy that," Marcus responded, then turned to the group. "Help is coming up the west stairs. Stay together and keep moving." Just then, several more veterans who had been in the building appeared, led by Mike Chen, a former Marine. They immediately moved to assist with the evacuation. "Get them out, Mike," Marcus ordered. "I need to stop Brennan before he destroys the evidence." Mike nodded, understanding the stakes. "We've got this, sir. Go." Marcus moved swiftly through the burning building, navigating the familiar corridors now filled with smoke and flames. He heard crashes coming from the records room and quickened his pace. Inside, he found Brennan frantically throwing files into a growing fire, his expensive suit covered in soot. The businessman spun around when Marcus entered, his eyes wild with desperation. "It's over, Brennan," Marcus said, his voice firm despite the smoke. "The evidence is already online. You're just adding arson and attempted murder to the charges." Brennan lunged forward with a metal file holder, swinging it like a weapon. "You don't understand. I built this empire. I won't let some crippled soldier destroy everything." Marcus easily deflected the attack, using his adapted combat techniques to control the situation. "Those crippled soldiers were injured because of your greed," he said, disarming Brennan with a swift movement. "My unit died because you cut corners on materials." The businessman tried to fight back, but Marcus's special forces training showed through. Even with one arm, his movements were precise and effective. He quickly subdued Brennan, forcing him to the ground just as Rita arrived with 2 firefighters. "Building's almost clear," Rita reported, helping secure Brennan. "Everyone's accounted for." Outside the scene was organized chaos. Fire trucks surrounded the building while medical teams treated smoke inhalation victims. The veterans who had helped with the evacuation gathered together, supporting each other as they always had. Dr. Hoffman rushed up to Marcus as he emerged from the building with Rita and their prisoner. "Everyone's safe," she reported, relief evident in her voice. "The fire department says they can save most of the structure." Marcus watched as police officers took Brennan into custody, the businessman's desperate gambit having failed completely. The evidence of his crimes was preserved, both digitally and in the partially damaged records, and now he would face justice for this attack as well. The veteran community had come together when it mattered most, proving their strength wasn't in their individual abilities, but in their unity and shared purpose. Under Marcus's leadership, they had protected their own while ensuring that those responsible for their injuries would finally be held accountable. The next morning, the Veteran Center's parking lot was filled with news vans and reporters. The story of Brennan's fraud, Blackwood's harassment, and the veterans' courage had exploded across social media overnight. Camera crews captured federal agents carrying boxes of evidence from Brennan's offices, while reporters detailed his scheme to defraud the military with substandard building materials. Marcus watched the morning news with Dr. Hoffman in the center's temporary command post, set up in a nearby church. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Construction magnate arrested. Military housing fraud led to soldier deaths. They're saying he'll face federal prosecution, Dr. Hoffman said, touching Marcus's shoulder gently. The evidence you gathered is overwhelming. The news switched to footage of Blackwood's gym, now empty and dark. The MMA fighter's social media accounts had gone silent after his followers turned against him en masse. Being exposed as the puppet of someone who had profited from soldiers' deaths had destroyed his carefully crafted image overnight. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support and donation notifications. The center's emergency fundraising page had gone viral, with veterans groups and private citizens contributing to help rebuild and expand their programs. We've received enough donations to repair the fire damage and upgrade our entire facility, Dr. Hoffman announced, showing Marcus the latest totals on her tablet. People want to help once they understand what we're doing here. The other veterans began filtering into the command post, many still wearing the clothes they'd evacuated in the night before. They gathered around the television, watching their story unfold on the national news. The coverage focused not just on Brennan's crimes, but on the courage and capability of the disabled veterans who had worked together to save their community. Rita appeared in the doorway, grinning. You should see the line of volunteers outside. Everyone wants to help rebuild. Dr. Hoffman turned to Marcus, her expression serious but warm. We're going to need someone to coordinate all this support and maintain security as we grow. I'd like you to take on that role permanently. Head of Security and Combat Instruction. Marcus looked around at the faces of his fellow veterans, seeing hope replace the fear and uncertainty of recent days. Their center wouldn't just survive, it would become stronger than ever. Justice had been served, and with it came the opportunity to build something even better than what they had before. Marcus stood in the newly renovated training room of the Phoenix Veterans Rehabilitation Center, watching as a group of disabled veterans practiced the adaptive combat techniques he'd developed. The once empty space now hummed with energy and purpose, filled with specialized equipment designed for athletes with various disabilities. Remember, it's not about what you can't do, he called out, his voice carrying across the room. It's about discovering what you can do differently. Rita moved among the veterans, making small corrections to their form. She caught Marcus's eye and smiled, remembering how far they'd come from those first secret training sessions. Now they worked together daily, combining their military expertise to create innovative training methods for disabled veterans. Your left side is stronger than you think, James, Marcus encouraged a young veteran who'd lost his right leg. Use that momentum to your advantage. He demonstrated the move, showing how his own missing arm had taught him to redistribute his weight and leverage his whole body differently. Dr. Patricia Hoffman watched from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride. The center had transformed under Marcus's leadership, becoming a beacon of hope for veterans nationwide. Other rehabilitation facilities had started sending their staff to learn their methods. Another reporter called, she said as she approached Marcus. They want to do a feature story on our adaptive combat program. Marcus pulled her close with his good arm, no longer hesitant about showing affection at work. Their relationship had blossomed naturally in the months following the crisis, built on a foundation of shared dedication to the veterans' well-being. Let me guess, they want to call it the One-Armed Warriors Revolution or something equally dramatic, he teased. Patricia laughed, touching his cheek gently. Actually, they want to focus on the whole program, how we're changing the way people think about disabled veterans. Your students are proving that adaptation doesn't mean limitation. Around them, veterans who had once felt defeated by their disabilities were moving with confidence and purpose. Some were training to become instructors themselves, eager to share these techniques with others. Rita joined them, wiping sweat from her brow. The new group is picking things up faster than expected. Your teaching methods are really working, Marcus. Marcus nodded, watching as one of his first students successfully demonstrated a complex defensive move to a newcomer. The pride in the veteran's eyes reflected exactly what Marcus had hoped to achieve. Not just physical capability, but restored confidence and sense of purpose. "We're not just teaching them to fight," he said quietly. "We're showing them they're still warriors, still capable of protecting themselves and others. That doesn't change just because our bodies have." If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, don't forget to subscribe. I post daily, and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.